Hello again, internets. This is Justin with This Justin Security. This video is the second part of a three-part series on the network scanner Nessus. In this video, I'll guide you through the functionality of Nessus and how to navigate it. Once we get a good feel of Nessus, we'll start our first scan using a basic scan, then we'll touch on advanced scanning, but we won't run a scan. If you're following along from our last video and you close your browser and you ended your Nessus session, you'll have to find it and run it again. It'll be located in either your start menu or program files. The easiest method would probably be to just navigate via your start menu. Select your start menu icon, navigate to alphabetically to T. The folder should be called Tenable Network Security, and under that you will have a Nessus web client. If you plan on starting over or pausing, it might be a good idea to create some kind of desktop shortcut. It's usually just as easy as dragging from your start menu to your desktop, like we did here. Once you've located the Nessus scanner utility, you can go ahead and just double click it and it will open your default web browser. Obviously, once again, mine is Firefox, so that is what Nessus will pop up in. As you can see, my login name and my password are already filled out because I told Firefox to save them. Once we hit login, we can log into Nessus and do some scans. Now that we finally have Nessus open and started, it might be a good idea to take a look at some of the settings and functions that Nessus has. Let's start in the upper right hand corner next to the bell that you see here. The bell is just for notifications. We don't have any yet, so there's not really any reason to pay attention to it for now. The item to the right or the left, the item to the left of the bell that we just talked about is the settings icon, little cogwheel that you see here. Go ahead and click that. Take a look at what we have in here. Basically just an overview of our settings. It tells us that our status is online, our version number, the platform we're using, the last time we connected, our last update, expiration, activation code, etc. We can also schedule software updates, but we probably won't have to worry about that. So the next setting is under accounts. Essentially this area is just for creating and administration of accounts. We can create a new user if we like. Each user has a role that they can play, standard or system administrator. Other versions have different user roles, but this home version that we're using just has standard and administrator. We'll briefly discuss the differences between standard and system administrator. I don't see us creating any for any reason, but it's always good to know for future reference. The standard users can create scans, policies, schedules, and reports, but they cannot change any users, user groups, any scanners, or system configurations can be changed by the standard user. The system administrator, however, has the same privileges as a standard user, but can also manage users, manage user groups, manage scanners, and also configure the system. We also have two other setting tabs that we can take a look at. They're communication and advanced. Both of these are outside of the scope of this video, so I would say if you'd like to do a little bit more research, definitely feel free to, but it's really a little bit more advanced than we need to go into. Navigating back to our scans section, upper left hand corner, brings us back to our main dashboard. The next setting we'll want to take a look at is the user profile. Go ahead and click near your name. There should be an arrow. Select user profile and it will open up a window of essentially account settings, user profile account settings. We can see here that I am the system administrator. We can see my username. If we go down, we can change my password if I wanted to. We can add plugin rules and generate API keys, which is another out of scope setting. Now that we have some of the basics down, I think it's probably a good idea to go ahead and start a scan. Pretty simple. Go ahead and select your scan tab at the top next to Nessus in the left hand side of your landing page. There should be a plus sign and it should say new scan. Go ahead and select new scan. After selecting new scan, you'll be prompted with 17 scanner templates. These scanner templates are all essentially based off of the advanced scan template. As you can see, we have quite a few scan templates. Most of them are disabled. Most of them we couldn't use. If you're using a home network, the majority of the upgrade scan templates would not even be useful in the first place. For this example, we will just be starting out using a basic network scan. That will be the scan that we perform together. The advanced scan will look into what extra features are offered compared to a basic network scan, and then I will show you a advanced scan compared to a basic network scan, and we can just take a look and see exactly what the difference is and if it's even worth performing an advanced scan. Alright, let's go ahead and locate the basic network scan. You got it right there. Select it. It will come up with some basic settings that we can play with. Of course, we're going to need to set up some initial information in order for Nessus to perform the scan. Starting off in the general settings, we can see we have a name, description, folder, and targets. Name, you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it basic scan. Description, we don't really need to label it. You don't have to if you don't want to. We know what we're doing with it. The name essentially describes what we're going to do with it, so we'll go ahead and skip that. Folder, let's go ahead and keep it in the default folder of my scans. Moving on to targets in our general settings, it shows the example of a IP address range 192.168.1.1 to 192.168.1.5. Most routers initially start off with 192.168.1.1. Usually that is the login for your gateway to access your router. So that'll be the first obvious choice. Some may vary. In this case, you will have to specifically know what your gateway login is for your router. Mine is actually different, so you'll see a difference in mine. I also am including a kind of a wacky range of IP addresses. So the IP addresses that I scan will definitely not be the IP addresses that you scan. I have many more devices on my network, and so each one is, I probably have about 15 different devices on my network, which means 15 different IP addresses, and they're all kind of out of order. So you'll see, like I said, once again, in my scan, different IP addresses than the scans that you will come up with. Don't be alarmed by this. This is totally okay. And you actually may have more devices than me. So if you think you might have more than 5 IP addresses or 5 devices that use IP addresses, you might want to count up, say you have 15. Instead of ending at .5, maybe end at .15. The biggest issue I see with this is it will take much longer to scan. That's okay with you. A 45 to an hour long scan is about what it takes for 15 devices on your network. Alright, moving along, we basically got our general settings for our basic setting and our basic network scan. We'll move on to schedule. This is a pretty basic, you can enable a schedule for Nessus to launch. We won't be doing that. We don't really need one. This is going to be our first scan. If you feel like you're advanced enough to start more scans later on after this, by all means feel free to do so. But we're going to go ahead and skip scheduling notifications. This is pretty neat. But you'll have to, set it up on your own. We're not going to do it here. You can send your reports to yourself, to your boss. Just a nice little extra feature. So you can know what's going on. You can get the scans sent to you if you'd like to. Moving on to discovery. This is essentially where we start to configure our scan. Our scan type, once again, these are all basic settings. We can change our port scans. We can go ahead and scan common ports or all ports or even a custom range of ports. The common is usually a good idea. Nessus knows what the vulnerable ports are, where they're located, so we'll go ahead and take its advice and just use common ports. Attempting to explain the settings below probably be outside of the scope of this particular video, but essentially all you really need to know is that it is scanning using protocols that it knows to be vulnerable, and in these scans, ports that are known to be vulnerable. So we'll take it on good faith that Nessus knows what it's doing and move on to the assessment. The assessment type, scan type for the basic network scan is default. There's no real good explanation of what this is, but essentially it scans for vulnerabilities. Since the scan is a basic scan, it only scans for known vulnerabilities quickly, and it does not scan web applications unless you change the settings to do so. In the report settings, we essentially see a section based on how a report will come out after we've performed the scan. The settings are fairly straightforward. Nessus provides quite a bit of good information, but you can reduce the amount of information that it gives you by selecting the override normal verbosity. For whatever reason, if you have limited disk space, or you actually make it report more information. Those are your two options. For the output, really the only other option that I would recommend choosing would be to designate hosts by their DNS name. Sometimes people name their computers, sometimes people name their printers, their iPhones, their Android devices. Basically what this does is it just shows the name of the device instead of the IP address. Feel free to select this option. I won't be in this video. The last setting in our basic network scan is going to be advanced. Since this is a basic network scan, we won't really play with this very much, but what we do know is that it is a default scan type. We can create a custom scan type, but once again, that would be more for an advanced usage. What we do know for this scan type is that we can have 30 simultaneous hosts, max, which means that 30 devices on our network, it will scan. Any more than that, and it won't pick them up. We have 4 simultaneous checks per host. This means that if we have 5 hosts, only 4 will be scanned. Once one is fully scanned, it will move to the next. It will not do any more than 4 at once. And then the 5-second network read timeout means that if it is taking 5 seconds to try and attempt to reach that host, it will time out and try again later. There is another option I'd like to discuss briefly in the new scan. Every scan will have this, but if you navigate up to the upper left-hand corner of the scan, you can see credentials. This is meant for more along the lines of a advanced network, or maybe even a network with some servers on it. You would need to provide authentication settings for a lot of these, so definitely not something that we will want to dabble in. I figured I'd just point it out though, just in case somebody had questions about it. You can configure this, but it is definitely out of the scope of this video. So go ahead and research some of the items in this. You'll definitely learn something. Alright, now that we've kind of got through what these settings do and kind of how they're used, we will go ahead and navigate back to the general setting underneath basic, and hopefully you input your IP addresses. I have input mine here. Once again, our IP address range is going to be totally different. I'm using mine specifically to illustrate a point, and so obviously our addresses are going to be different. So once again, don't be alarmed. I would just go with what we talked about in the beginning, a range of 5 IP addresses, and just to kind of get an idea of what we're dealing with. Once you've got your IP addresses input, you want to go ahead and save this scan. Once you save this scan, it should say scan saved successfully in the upper right hand corner of your initial dashboard, your initial scan dashboard. As you can see, we have our name, basic scan. Our schedule is on demand, which means that we determine when we do these scans. We talked about scheduling scans, and that is a possibility. You can always reconfigure this scan or create a new scan if you'd like to, and have it run on a schedule. We won't be doing that because it's not necessary in this video. Alright, well, without any further messing around, let's go ahead and launch our scan. To do that, we'll just go ahead and select the play button. It says launch when you hover over it. It won't take you directly to your scan, so we will go ahead and navigate to that. As you can see, it is running with the update arrows in a circle. Just to note, you can also pause the scan if you'd like to, or stop the scan if you'd like to. If you got something else going on, or if your wife's watching Netflix and you're messing up her Netflix, pause it. Do it at night. Don't bug the wife. Now we want to go ahead and view our scan in its progress. To do that, we simply just highlight the basic scan, as you can see here, select it, and it will go to our scan, what it's doing right now. Since this process can take a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward right now. This particular scan can take upwards of an hour, so if you have more devices on your network, it could possibly take longer. If you have things going on in the background on your network, if you're playing, online games or whatever, it will take longer. So definitely recommend kind of shutting down your network for a little bit, not doing too much on it, and letting Nessus do its thing. Before we move on to actually analyzing our results of our scan, I would like to take a look at one last scan template, and that would be the advanced scan template. Let's go ahead and navigate to create a new scan. In our new scanner templates, go ahead and select advanced scan. I'd like to mention one more time that every other scan is essentially based off of this advanced scan. So this is probably the most powerful scan you can do on your system. And once again, I will not be performing the scan. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what you can expect if you decide to perform an advanced scan. As you can tell, the settings here are basically the same as the basic scan. The basic scan was built off of advanced scan, so it's going to be very similar. All of the basic settings under this particular scan will be exactly the same as the basic scan that we did. So let's go ahead and move down to Discovery. Discovery is where we're going to see probably the biggest difference out of comparing an advanced scan to a basic scan. In Discovery, we see host discovery, port scanning, and service discovery. Host discovery is basically what protocols are used to find the devices that you have selected in your range of IP addresses. Your hosts will be your devices, your computers, your phones, etc. Since we are primarily dealing with computers, many of the other settings aren't really necessary to configure, so we'll go ahead and move on to port scanning. In port scanning, as you can see, we have the port scan range as default. In this particular box, you actually can specify the ports you would like to have scanned. This would come in handy if you were specifically looking at particular ports that you were aware of, or just kind of wanted to watch. If you're a basic home user, really none of this is necessary because I don't really expect you to know which ports you want to scan. But it's good to at least know that it is scanning port ranges that are known vulnerability vectors. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and move along and see what service discovery looks like. In service discovery, you will probably have different services depending on what programs you're using on your computer. This will vary from network to network. What you really want to know is that this is discovering services that are tied to specific ports. Moving on to assessment, we have general, brute force, web applications, Windows, and malware. Many of these options are really not entirely necessary. Some of them can be somewhat helpful. I would like to point out a couple settings that you might want to take a look into. Starting off in the general settings under assessment, we see the accuracy label. Under that, we can go ahead and select perform thorough tests. While it may disrupt your speed or impact your scan speed, it might be useful to have a deeper test for your network. Another one of the settings that I'd like to bring attention to under assessment would be the malware setting. You can actually have Nessus scan for malware on your network. It's not a bad idea. While I don't necessarily approve of mixing antivirus with malware with network scanners, it might be a good idea to see what Nessus does come up with if you do end up having malware. Moving on to report, essentially it has exactly the same settings as our basic scan. There's not really actually any difference, so we can just go ahead and move on to advanced. These advanced settings are how the scan, as far as performance goes, work. We can, have multiple simultaneous hosts, Like right now we have 5. On our basic scan we used 4. It's all up to you and how you think your computers and your network will perform. If you think that you can have 10, by all means do 10. The scan may take longer. It may, who knows really. It's up to your system and what you feel comfortable with. Now that we've done the advanced scan and the basic scan, I hope you realize that the basic scan is probably more than enough to cut it for a basic home network level scan. Now that we kind of have a good understanding, or at least a basic understanding on the scans that Nessus performs, we can move on to analyzing these scans so we can know exactly what is going on our network, what is going on our devices, and then hopefully harden those devices to make our network as a whole more secure. Hopefully you've learned a little bit in this video, and I hope that you will join me in my next video where we interpret the results of our scan. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.